Grant Jenkins, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me. Good to be here.
Grant, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about your background as a coach and what do you do now, please?
All right, cool. So this is my 25th year of strength and conditioning, or athletic development as I prefer to call it. Graduated, and you might hear with the accent, graduated in South Africa, did my degree, honors, did some work there, and then came across to Australia. Goal was always to work with athletes, and in this profession, you sort of start off with your junior athletes, you start off with your amateur type athletes, and as you build experience, you work your way up through the ranks. I did that. One thing I always had in the back of my mind is my goal number one was to take an athlete to the pinnacle of their sport. So when I was working with Olympic type athletes, sprinters and so forth, it was to try to take at least one athlete to the Olympics. Then my career deviated a little bit, and I was working more with rugby union. And then so during that period, the obvious goal was to take a team to the Rugby World Cup. And then got an opportunity in tennis and worked with Tennis Australia. So I was employed by Tennis Australia for a number of years, and I worked with a young girl named Ash Barty, who went on to become number one in the world, and another kid, Nick Kyrgios, and some others. But when I was with tennis, a female tennis player by the name of Jamila Gajdosova, she was Slovakian born, but had immigrated to Australia, and I'd seen her on the tour quite a bit, and she asked me to, she got to about, I think, 22 in the world, and she represented Australia in the Fed Cup, which is the women's tournament, and she said, hey, can you prepare me for Wimbledon? And in the back of my mind, that was, yeah, okay, this is going to be preparing an athlete for consider Wimbledon, probably the Grand Slams. There's four of them. They obviously together are the pinnacle of tennis, but Wimbledon, I think, just has that slight edge. I thought, okay, cool. So that was my trigger to then leave full-time employment and start by myself. So that was in 2012, prepared her for Wimbledon, and then I gave my notice to Tennis Australia to say, hey, I'm leaving. And so since then, I've been in what we call the private sector. So when athletes pay me individually. And so what's that, 2013? So over the last 10, 11 years, my focus shifted a little bit from working with elite athletes. And we can kind of discuss this because it's, to me, it was an evolution. From working with elite athletes, and I started to realize that I really loved working with junior athletes.
Okay.
And yeah, it was from a self-development point of view, it was a little bit of an ego check. You work with an elite athlete and you're at Wimbledon and it's amazing. But you think like, I don't know, there's things that should be done. I'll give you an example. So when I was working with Jamila, we're at a restaurant, and I'm sitting across from her. So by this stage, she's, top 30 in the world, top 25 in the world. She's played multiple Grand Slams, for a year. She was on the tour by that stage. She probably spent about 8 years on the tour. She had worked with all these wonderful coaches and whatever. And we're sitting at the restaurant and she's ordering food. And I'm going, no, you can't eat that. No, we're not going to eat that. No, I need you to eat more of this. And she was almost like confused. And I'm going, well, this nutrition and your performance goals and your nutrition habits are not aligned. So one of the things that I started to do is like, hey, I've got to work with these athletes younger so I can set the habits, so I can set the, the foundations. And then in working with these younger athletes, I started to notice, well, I get to see this athlete, I don't know, maximum 3 hours a week. The other 165 hours, they're with mom and dad and with a whole bunch of other people. Yeah. So then I started working with parents, really focusing on, through education seminars and all that kind of stuff, working with parents, but also getting them into the gym. Amazing how many times you see an overweight, unfit, unathletic parent getting annoyed with their athletic child for not, doing something on court or on the field or in the pool. And I'm thinking, you got to lead from the front here, buddy. You're not doing this in your life at all. Yeah. So then I started working more and more with parents. And now that I'm fast approaching 50, really in the last few years and working with moms and dads, but specifically with dads, trying to get dads back to being fit, stronger, put on muscle mass, educate them about all sorts of things. And then in the last 2 years, my wife and I founded a supplement company. But yeah, so that's overview of my background.
Yeah, wow, man, you have a lot of years of experience and quite a huge range of things you have to deal with, and the people you had to train. I'm just wondering, how has your coaching philosophy progressed over the years and between these sudden shifts in who you're training with? If you could perhaps explain what has been the most challenging part of these grand changes you made and how your training philosophy has evolved over the years up to where you are now, of course.
Okay, yeah, good question. I can say this. So I've never been a dictatorial coach. I've never been a yelling and screaming coach. I've never been an angry coach. And I struggled with that in the early years because it felt like this is like, the early 2000s. I moved across from South Africa to Australia, and Australia had just hosted the 2000 Olympics. They were pretty much the sports capital of the world in many respects. World leaders in sports science, nutrition, training techniques, all this kind of stuff. And so I came across here, and it was a tough one in the beginning because I was working with this club level, amateur type athletes and junior type athletes, and there'll be some good programs, but the expectation back in those days was the strength and conditioning coach, the fitness guy, whatever, you would flog them and you would smash them and work them really hard and all this kind of stuff. And it just didn't gel with me. It wasn't who I was. And in about 2005, 2006, somewhere around there, I stumbled across a book, and it was a coach. It was written by a coach, and he talked about loving your athletes, just loving them as a person. And basically through that, I don't know if I coined the term or borrowed the term, but I always just said my athletes are people first. And I got to this book almost. It was an American. I think he was like an American football high school coach. I think that's what he was. But the main message that I took from this book is that, yeah, love your athletes. And I don't know, it felt like it gave me permission in this world of the sort of hard, uncaring, flog them kind of mentality. I could forge my own path of, I love you guys and I'm going to build you guys and I'm going to work with you. And, especially as the athletes became more elite or more mature, your body, I know the science, and the best combination that we're going to have is if we work together. And so I think I'm quite a soft sort of person from that perspective. And that's where the results came, is the athletes knowing that they can trust me, the athletes knowing that I've got their best interest at heart. I watch how they come into the gym, and if they're bright and energetic and excited, then my session in my head sort of shifts. It might still be a very similar program, but this, what we're going to do might shift slightly. And if they come in and they drag in their feet and they've had a big day, and I probably know that they're going through exams, or I don't know, the mom and dad are having trouble, or whatever the situation is, they're breaking up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, then I adjust that same program a little bit, and I work with them on that kind of stuff. And so in terms of that was probably the best book for me to read at that time, to kind of give me that permission to not try to be something I wasn't, and I could actually be the coach that I wanted to be, which is, I want to work next to you. I want to work with you. Sure, there are going to be times where we're going to have some tough conversations, but that also always comes from a place of love, not from a place of ego or, anger or whatever those other places come from.
Right. I do agree that this approach is somehow better. Personally, I grew up in Greece, and the style of coaching in sports there is quite harsh and militant. Coaches were very hard on you, especially when you failed. I wonder, do you think being more militant can be or is more effective in some sports, or you always having the approach that you took and working alongside the athlete and understanding that then, even though they are elite, they still have these personal issues, that we are all human.
Yeah.
So do you think this militant style is better in some regards, or there's your way, let's say, is always the best way?
No. Well, I feel like part of my way includes that militant if it's necessary, because you've got to do what's best for the athlete. And so there have been some very harsh conversations or very real conversations about where they're at. And in the beginning of this sort of tangent, I said, like, I'm not really a yelling, shouting coach, but I can be. And if it's necessary. I suppose it's more that there's other dimensions there. There are other tools that I had. And my starting point is, you want what's best for your career. I want what's best for your career. Let's work together. Now, I also need to say, if someone comes in, and this happens quite frequently, like as I've had success with athletes in swimming or tennis or something like that, then I start getting, especially in the private sector, younger athletes come in from that sport. They go, oh, you had success with this person, and I'm 10 and 12. So very often I am the first person that they've ever been into the gym with. Okay. And in that situation, it's not a 50-50 relationship at all. It's, maybe even it's 100% me and 0% them in terms of input into their program. And then as they understand and they learn and they understand their body and they understand, and I start teaching them, and they understand the reasons why we do certain things, then that's when it grows. But, the first, depending on the age of the athlete and their experience when they come in, and then also their maturation and their ability to grasp things, in the beginning, it's 100% me. And I don't know if I know what you're saying with militant, but it's 100% what I am. I'm dictating. I'm telling them what they're going to. It's a little bit like parenting, like in the beginning, you're going to say, hey, kids, you're 3 months old. You're not going to tell them, I need to bring you up into society where these are rules and regulations and social nuances and all
guidance. Yeah.
Guidance. Yeah. And then you, over time, as they mature in our age and they earn the right, so that you give them more and more freedom. And part of that role is to, is to have a well-balanced child go into the world. And I want a well-balanced athlete. And if they left me, or I got removed from the situation, or as often has happened, they are traveling around the world and I'm still in Australia, they can make decisions by themselves. I'll give you a quick example.
Please.
Ash Barty, I started working with her when she was 10. So I was literally the first person she's ever, when she walked into the gym, I was next to her and we started there. And a few years later, she won Junior Wimbledon, which is the under 18s competition. She won it as a 14-year-old. I was not traveling with her to that tournament. I was still in Australia, but she was I think she was away for 4 weeks leading up to Junior Wimbledon. And in that last 4 weeks, I had to, and she was really well prepared. She planned the gym program, the strength side of it. And by that stage, we'd been working for 3 or 4 years together. And she could then, one example that stood up, she wrote the program and then I would oversee it. And she wanted to do her form of squats that she was going to do was overhead squats. So you got front squats, back squats, jump squats, thrust squats. She wanted to do overhead squats. I said, Ash, okay, tell me about why you want to do overhead squats. And she said, well, gee, my legs, I think, are going to be strong enough, and I don't want to be too heavy in the lead up to this. So overhead squats going to be a lighter weight. So that's what I'm thinking. And that thinking had been guided by what we had done in previous tournaments. Mm-hmm. She could actually make a really educated decision leading up into that, and she could choose her weights, and she knew what sets and reps to do and stuff like that. So. But that was, I was seeing her 4 to 5 days a week for 3 years by that stage. So she was really well educated and well versed in that.
Right. So it's also trusting the athletes a lot especially after you've instilled in them these good habits and this good mindset and knowing what they need to do. I'm curious, do you think talent is more important than discipline in tennis? And can the right coach or coaching method make up for a lack of talent?
No, talent is king. Talent is king, 100%. I read all those books, the Malcolm Gladwell books, and I think there's about 3 or 4 Daniel Coyle book, all about 10,000 hours. This is why I love this long form content, because we can really discuss this. So there's a couple of things. Personally, I believe talent is king. If you've got talent, the ceiling is higher. I wouldn't say I'm talented at all. I've worked with talented people. They need less stimulation. They can do more with what they've got. When you work with someone who's got talent, you believe in talent, 100%. You get to see it. However, I think the message of the 10,000 hours and the discipline and the mental fortitude and the practice and all that kind of stuff is a great message to have. One simple example, if I'm working with a young kid, let's say a swimmer, and they've got, I don't know, 100-meter race that's coming up, and it's going to take them roughly a minute to do, and they don't do well in this minute. The state champs, national champs, but whatever's important to them. And they come out of the pool and they go, oh, this is the worst. I thought I'd come third. I thought I'd get a podium, or I thought I'd hit a PB, and I did really bad. And because we've planted the seed and we've already chatted about this, we talked about 10,000 hours, and it's going to take a long time. And go, well, that's 1 minute out of your 10,000 hours. Why are you making such a big deal of it? And it works on the flip side. It works especially like with parents, like, oh, now I think, little Johnny's doing really well because he hit a PB, or they did really well, or on the tennis court, they beat someone who they shouldn't have beaten. And I go, okay, well, how long is the match? 2 hours. Okay, 2 hours out of 10,000. Like, they're not that good yet. One result either way, really good or really bad.
Doesn't mean much.
Doesn't matter in the context of 10,000 hours. So there's so much good messaging about it. But if you said to me, Grant, do you want to be a good coach? I'd say, yeah, I want to be a good coach. Give me good athletes. And then I'm going to look like a good coach, But so, yeah, the question about talent, it's there. It's 100% true. All the discipline in the world the way I see it is your talent is your ceiling. And then your discipline, your training, your coaching, all that kind of stuff is how close do you get to your ceiling.
Nice.
And, you look at someone like a Nick Kyrgios in tennis, and he's just got unbelievable talent. And if you can put him in the right environment, I think he'd really, really do well. But Ash had a huge amount of talent. I don't know if many people know this, but Ash's dad was a state level golfer. So she had unbelievable touch and could do things that you just go, hey, and she could figure out things even at a young age. You say, Ash, what happened then? She said, well, I was trying to do this and then that didn't work. And so, there were just levels there. And bearing in mind, like when I was working with Ash, I didn't just work with Ash or Nick. I was working with, 15 to 18 players at pretty much each year, I guess. And you haven't heard of the other 17. I got to see Ash in her own age group with other girls, or Nick with other guys. And, they've been given the same circumstances. They've been given the same training. They've been given the same opportunities. They've been given the same discipline, all those kind of things. But you've heard.
At some point, these genetics play a massive role on what you can do. And no matter how motivating we want to be to encourage people who don't have those genetics, at some point, I cannot play on the NBA simply because I'm short, to put it plainly. So I understand why you would think that for sure. But regardless of the talent, mindset perhaps doesn't come with genetics. Yes. So let's say that these people that you train, especially the elite ones, I'm sure they suffered from self-doubt and they've had the losses. How do you motivate someone who is not only exhausted, but suffered these great losses in their games, and now they're adopting this self-defeating mindset? How do you turn that around?
Yeah, I mean, one tool is relying on the 10,000 hours. It's got nothing, it's such a small component of that. And remember, 10,000 hours, that's a lot of time. That's, 10 years. So it can apply quite late into, well, I wouldn't say late into someone's career, but it can apply, a sport like rugby union, you'd probably only start counting those 10,000 hours from high school, 12, 13, 14. You're not really going to count the under 6, club rugby kind of stuff. But looking at the context of the whole of that journey to me is a very good starting point. And a lot of these are just cliches, but we emphasize them in the gym. So if you've trained with me, you've probably heard me say 1,000 times, control the controllables. You've heard me say, no one cares how you feel, only what you do, or a version of that. So we remove that. And I think this is what the important part is that training is about planting seeds that I can then or what do you want to call it? Like I can reap the benefits of it later. So the whole thing about no one cares how you feel, or oh, it's only what you do. If someone is feeling flat on game day or after the match or whatever, it just comes back to what's the next step, what can you control, and what are you going to do about it? And it's amazing. Like I often believe that the actions, a lot of people. I'll tell you one thing, Francesco. That's sort of a big difference between those who achieve and those who don't. Is those who achieve or those who don't achieve, they rely on their feelings way too much. I'm not feeling motivated. I'm not going to go to the gym. I'm not going to do that. Those who often achieve work despite their feelings, so they'll do what's required. And then you often find the feelings follow the actions. So I don't feel like going to gym, but I'll go anyway, and I'll just walk through the door. And then once I walk through the door, then it's easy to jump on the bike for 5 minutes, and that's easy. Then once I've done that, and I don't know, the music, the atmosphere, whatever it is, and then I'll go do my first few warm-up sets of squat, and then the momentum builds, but the action precedes the feeling. And then there's a great quote, and again, a lot of the stuff I've either stolen or read from somewhere else, or whatever. But there was a blog post back in, I don't know, maybe the late 90s, and it was how your body feels is a lie, or what your body is telling you is a lie. And the idea behind this was, and it's totally different to how we are in sports science now. And the guy just went through a number of times that someone walked into the gym and had DOMS. DOMS is delayed onset of muscle soreness, the soreness you get after maybe doing too much in the gym yesterday. And then they've hit a PB. They've smashed the session or whatever it is. And I remember reading it and then kind of being able to disconnect, right? This is what I'm feeling and this is what I'm going to do, or this is what I can do, or I'm not going to let that feeling hold me back. And so you infuse all that into your training. And by the time we've gone into competition, and whether we had a great win or a terrible loss, we can rely on those things. And I think that's what's really important. So I rely on all these tools, but the tools aren't there. The tools don't work if you haven't planted the seeds or laid the groundwork, whatever you want to say, in the gym, in the training, in the hopefully weeks, months, maybe even years before that. That's the important aspect of that.
Right. And when it comes to this foundation that you're talking about, I'm going to make it a bit more general. If you could change one thing in sports coaching that you think is just bad practice when it comes to building that foundation, what would it be? So many years, I'm sure you've seen many bad practices that you'll be like, I wish people would just stop doing that.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's a few. I mean, off the top of my mind, one of the things that so one of my sayings is, and I take on a lot of young coaches and I help develop them, and we've had some amazing people come through the program that are now working with USA Rugby and the Navy SEALs and UFC and stuff. And one of the things that I say, and this I would love to apply this to junior sport across nations, across sports, across cultures, across everything.
Okay.
You haven't taught it until they are doing it. And then I'll expand. So you'll hear a frustrated coach either complaining to his assistant or to parents, or maybe yelling at the athletes and going, I've told you this 1,000 times, but we've gone over it. And to me, there's a saying, Francesca, my mother says, if you point a finger at someone, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. So you've got to take responsibility. So wait, you are telling me you've done this 1,000 times, they are still not getting it, and you think the problem's with them, not your method. Okay? So I want any of my coaches or myself, we only say that we've taught it when you've applied it under pressure in competition. Okay, that's when I can say, yep, I taught that, or I, helped educate or develop that, or whatever it is. So I can't say, well, we did it 1,000 times on the court and on the pool, and if you don't do it in competition, then I haven't taught it yet. I might have demonstrated it, or I might have done some other things, but I haven't taught it. So that's number one, is you've got to self-reflect, and you can only claim it once it's been implemented. Another thing I have is the rule of 3s. So in any one period of time, we'll be working on a maximum of 3 things. In the week leading up to competition, we come back to only those 3 things. And that's a maximum. And then on competition day, the most number of messages I'll give you is 3. And what I often see with coaches is they start panicking as it gets closer and closer to competition. So they will start going, okay, Jessica, you need to do this, and don't forget about this, and then you got to also do this, and then this, and it's just flooding them.
Things.
So there's too many things to think about, and they end up being overwhelmed or not thinking of anything. And I think that's coming out of desperation and pressure on the coach, which they are then offloading to the athlete. And so my thing is that we do less and less. And there's a guy by the name of Ashley Jones who worked with the Crusaders rugby union team in New Zealand. He worked with the New Zealand All Blacks, amazing strength and conditioning coach. And he used to talk about overcooked in the preseason, bearing in mind he was working with rugby. So he would overtrain players in the preseason, and in the in-season, so overcooked in the preseason, undercooked in the in-season. So as they got closer and closer to games, matches, they would do less and less. And his goal was to get to a game where you wondered if you've done enough. But when he was with the Crusaders and when he was with the All Blacks, they were so fresh. We watch other teams, and as they panic and they do, oh, come on, let's do it one more time, let's do it one more time, let's do it one more. Yeah. And the motivation and the morale and the physicality is all just dropping as the coach is trying to get it. Whereas the Crusaders under Robbie Deans and the New Zealand, I think the All Blacks was, Graham Henry was the coach at the time. These guys would do less and less as the match got closer. We say that as you get closer to a match, there's less and less you can do to win and more you can do to lose. So, I've embraced that philosophy as like, okay,
less is more.
Yeah.
Less is more sometimes.
Less is more. That's exactly it. Yeah. As you get, so a long way from competition, more is more. Let's do more. As we get closer, less is more.
Nice. I like that. All right. I want to change the subject a bit and go to nutrition.
Okay.
Here in the UK, most supermarket aisles are filled with artificial sugars, ultra-processed food. And I believe that nowadays we are just overfed, but undernourished.
Yep.
Let's start from the fundamentals. How does a balanced diet look like for you, please?
Oh, okay. So, fundamentals. There's 3 macronutrients. There's carbohydrates, there's fats, and there's protein. And we might get a little bit conspiracy theorist here. We might get a little bit a few other things, but
let's go for it.
Of those 3, if you're looking to be healthy, and let's differentiate between health and performance. There's a difference. Whatever your favorite sporting hero is doing, if you are looking to be healthy, I wouldn't be looking at elite athletes. Okay. We need to differentiate that from I'm talking about general health perspective. I'm talking about nutrition. It's 2 totally different domains. You've actually got to switch from one to the other. Might be the elite guys might do some healthy things and the healthy people might do some of the elite things, but just think of them as separate. So there's 3 macronutrients. I believe protein is the number 1. It's the number 1 to focus on.
Okay.
Typically, so you and I, we do not need to eat another carbohydrate for the rest of our lives and we'll be okay. From a health perspective, I'm not talking performance, health. We do not need to eat. And from fats, there are what's called essential fatty acids. So there are a few fats that we need to eat. And just to clarify, because we might get into this a little bit more, the word essential when it comes to nutrition means you need to eat it. Non-essential doesn't mean it's not important. It just means your body can make it. So carbohydrates your body can make in the form of glycogen and a process called gluconeogenesis. No one has to remember any of the stuff, but you can make it.
Okay.
And then within protein, there's amino acids and then non-essential amino acids, which are still important, but your body can make them. And then there are essential amino acids, which you have to eat. So of the 3 macronutrients, protein's the most important, and that's what we should be focusing on. Because if you nail your protein and you eat good animal fats and eggs and stuff, very often you're going to be good enough with the essential fats. And then once you have that, then the carbohydrates and whatever else you have, then it almost doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter. It'll come in. And then from within that, obviously the more natural, less processed your protein sources are. So on a continuum, you might have grass-fed organic beef, and then all the way down to, on the other side, some kind of sausages or whatever it is. The more natural, the less processed, the better it's going to be. And so one of my goals, especially with the moms and the dads that I work with, is let's just focus on the protein. Let's get that in. And one of the reasons we do that is because our bodies need a certain amount of protein per day. You will continue to feel hungry, or you'll continue to eat until you hit that protein target. It's called the protein to energy ratio, and it was developed by a guy, Robenheimer. I think his first published paper was in 2002. It's a very interesting concept, and it makes total sense. I'll give it an example. So I was in my teenage years. I was fairly active growing up in South Africa, playing every sport that I could, riding my bike, going surfing, all that kind of stuff. But I've always been health conscious. So I've always tried to eat healthy. I've just had probably what you'd call now the wrong health paradigms. So I would eat Wheat Bix, like a bran kind of cereal for breakfast.
Yeah. I know
Wheat Bix. Or all bran. I never ate the Fruit Loops or the Cocoa Pops or any of that kind of stuff. So I'd eat that for breakfast. And Francesco, how it worked is I eventually started eating it out of a salad bowl, my mother's salad bowl. Because I put 15 of those into my bowl, pour the milk in, and I'd eat them. And my mother would say, okay, you finished breakfast? I'd be like, yeah, finished breakfast. I've just eaten 15 of these things. Like, I'm full. And then 2 hours later, I'd be hungry again. And my mother would be like, you've just eaten 15. Why are you hungry? So again, I thought I was being healthy. So I'd have a whole wheat sandwich with lettuce and tomato, maybe a slice of cheese. I'd eat that. And my mother would say, okay, you're full. And I'm like, yeah. I'm no longer hungry. 2 hours later, I'd be hungry again. And this was my life. As a teenager, every 2 hours, I was starving. I now understand, under this protein to energy ratio, what was happening. The first signal I'd get is my stomach would be full. I've eaten 15 of these things with milk, maybe some honey or whatever. And my stomach would be, like physically full.
Yeah.
And then as my body was breaking it down, it's going, hey, Grant, there's no protein here. We need protein. Where's the protein? So that's when 2 hours later, I'd eat the next thing. The whole wheat sandwich, minimum protein, lettuce, no protein, essentially tomato, maybe cheese is a little bit of protein. And this would happen the whole way through until we got to dinner, and whether it's, a typical South African family or whatever, it was really sort of that meat and 3 veg type meal. And that's where I get my protein from. And then I wouldn't be hungry till the next morning, wake up hungry, and then I'd do it. And so I understand that. I understand that from a scientific perspective. I understand it from my own personal perspective. And now I get to see it with my clients. We go high protein. We'll have something like, I know eggs are not very high protein, but they're higher protein than almost any breakfast cereal that's out there. And you get a little bit of energy with it. You get a lot of protein, and people can last, you have that at 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and then they're not hungry till 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And if you nail that protein, you don't have to calorie count. You don't have to be restrictive mentally. You don't have to be disciplined. You just don't feel like eating until, and we've done experiments on this. Sorry, I know I'm going all over the place here.
That's fine.
In the gym, we will do these challenges. Like, so month of February, we'll do like 100 push-ups a day. And at the end of the month, you've got 2,800 more push-ups that you wouldn't have normally done. We do these little things. And one challenge we do for 4 weeks is meat and eggs. That's all you're allowed to eat. You can cook and butter, you can add salt and pepper, and that's it. And then every 3 or 4 days, you are allowed to take a break. You have something healthy. It's not really a cheat day, because you can have salmon, or you can have salad, or like Greek yogurt or whatever.
Healthy thing.
A healthy thing, yeah. But it's just that break. And the first time I did it, I didn't take this break until I started on Monday, and I was only taking that break on a Sunday. And by the end of it, I was like, you just end up hating your food. And at the end of 4 weeks, I was like, oh, I'm sick of this. But a few things that happen with this is a number of our clients will report, because they go, what? I can only eat meat and eggs. Like, how am I going to eat that 3 times a day? And now I just smile internally, because there's no chance you'll eat 3 meals a day. You'll probably eat 2, and often you'll just eat 1. Why? Because you've given your body the protein that it needs. You've probably given all the micronutrients that it needs, most of them, and you're satisfied. So, if you tell someone who's on what we call, you guys know the SAD, Standard Australian Diet, or the Standard American Diet, SAD.
First time I hear it.
Sorry?
First time I hear it.
Oh,
The
okay.
SAD one.
It's SAD, yeah. It fits in so perfectly. So, I mean, I haven't been to the UK since about 2012, I think. So, but I'm guessing the food's as bad in terms of what you're saying, the artificialness and reduction in protein and all that kind of stuff.
It's very bad.
So, you tell someone, hey, I need you to eat 1 meal a day, or reduce your frequency, or maybe you decide that they need to do some form of fasting or something. It's unbelievable. Back when yeah, exactly, because they're not getting the protein. Like back when I was a teenager, even in my early 20s, I would eat two Subway footlongs for lunch easily. And that was after breakfast, and I'd still have dinner, but I was having a pasta dinner and a cereal breakfast and 2 footlongs for lunch. And there's no way I could have eaten 1 meal a day. There's no way I could have fasted for 16 hours or whatever the thing is. But when you nail your protein, it actually happens subconsciously. You just don't feel like it. You don't, and it's hard to understand that when you've been in this mindset of, especially, graduating in the 90s from university, where I had we were told 3 meals a day, but you got to snack and you got to keep your metabolism up, and you got to eat every 2 to 3 hours. You got to do all this high carb, 70% carb. You're doing all this kind of stuff. Fasting is just like another world. But you start doing meat and eggs, and you start nailing your protein. 3 meals becomes 2 meals. 2 meals some days might become 1. You can trust your hunger. Yeah. So, long answer to a short question.
That's okay. That's okay. No, I agree. Protein is king. Protein is king. And quite likely, if you have a high protein diet, you are eating healthy by default, because protein is not in this. There is no protein in these artificial foods. There's only sugars and carbs. So by default, a high protein diet is, on average, 90% more healthy than any other diet, just because protein is found on lean, ancestral foods. So I agree with you. Yeah, I find this on myself. I work in hospitality, so sometimes it's 12 hours a day just walking around. I always start breakfast with protein, and I eat only 2 meals a day, and I walk a lot of steps, and I burn sometimes even 3,000, 4,000 calories a day, and I'm not hungry. The days that I start with a salad or just a sandwich, same as you said, hungry by 12 p.m. right away. So 100%. Yeah.
And I mean, what you mentioned there about being in hospitality, you'll understand this. And I think it's important for the listeners to understand this. When I say there's a war on protein, to me, it's just more of a mental concept for us to understand. The war on protein is the most expensive of the 3 macronutrients. It also doesn't last very long. So in my pantry, I can have fats and I can have carbohydrates through sugar, honey, whatever I want. But protein, I have, if it's not in the freezer, and even if it's in the freezer, it's not going to last that long, and it's going to be in the fridge, and then I'm going to eat it pretty quickly. Well, this applies to everyone who's making a profit out of food at any level. Restaurant, selling through the canteen at school, the club, the sports club where kids are training or playing or whatever. It's happening at every cafe. It's happening through all those middle aisles of the supermarket. So if protein has the lowest profit margin, I have to turn it over very quickly. Then that's the key ingredient that me as a corporation, me as a business owner, me as someone who's looking to profit from this, that's what I'm going to reduce. I can fill it with the flavors and the sugars and the fats and all that kind of stuff to get the right texture. I can do all that kind of stuff, and a lot of it's quite stable, but I can't do it with the protein. So if I'm going to make a ham sandwich, the ham sandwich that I make at home is going to be full of protein for my kids. We don't eat many ham sandwiches, but you get the point. But if we go to where they play sport and we order a ham sandwich, it's going to be a huge amount of white bread. It's going to be maybe some butter or something or whatever, but it's going to be the smallest amount of ham. And then that ham is going to be the smallest amount of natural pork, natural protein. And so they're going to get the least amount of protein possible. And that's what's going to drive my profit margins up. And so once you understand that, especially as a father or as a family man or whatever, like my wife and I are constantly, okay, we're going out. We need to, what protein sources are we going to provide our kids? Oh, like another thing, apple, fruit, that lasts forever. Well, when I say forever, relative to meat, you can put in the school bag, the kids can be away for 8 hours and they're going to be fine. You put a piece of chicken in there, and after about 4 hours, you're already thinking, oh, like, is it good enough? Even with ice blocks and all that kind of stuff, is it good enough to eat? And so it's easy even as a parent, if you're packing and the kid goes from school to sport or whatever, it's easier to pack the carbohydrate stuff, not so much the protein.
Coach, I'm going to give you 5 elements of good health, and I want you to rank them from the worst to the best. Okay, so we have nutrition, sleep, exercise, hydration, and a stress-free life.
All right.
Nutrition, sleep, exercise, hydration, and a stress-free life. Let's start from the least important to the most important. What do you think?
All right. Ooh, okay. To me, and we can go into this, I think hydration's overrated, and I'll expand on that. Okay. So do you want me to rate them, or will we talk about hydration first?
Up to you. We can do the whole list, and then you can go. You can explain why.
Do that. Okay. So I'm going to put hydration there. The stress-free life I'm going to put fourth, but I'll explain because I think there's distress and there's eustress. Distress is bad stress, and eustress is good stress. And so I think stress-free life. I actually worry that in Australia, the lucky country, I don't think we have enough stress. People get stressed over the smallest little things because it's so good here. Now, exercise, sleep, and nutrition. And I'm not allowed to go one for, because
it has to be one at the top.
I do feel that if you focus on your exercise and nutrition, sleep improves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put sleep as 3.
Right.
Because you do good exercise. Yeah, this is my thinking. If you do good exercise and you have good nutrition, sleep often improves. Now, I'm not talking about if you've got a pathological issue with sleep, but
just the average person. Just the average person. Like,
I want to put exercise number 1, nutrition number 2. And again, what I'm looking at is, yes, I know there's a saying, you can't outrun a bad diet, and it's true.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of the average person. Now, I don't know the stats in the UK. I think they would reflect Australia. I think they would reflect US. But the US currently, 88% of people have a metabolic condition. 88%. In other words, if you don't have a metabolic condition, you're already in the top 12% of health. Okay, in the US. Now, I'm guessing UK and Australia is better than that, but I don't think by much. So why I say exercise number 1 is because exercise is what often can start the process of improved health. You can start with a walk. You can add some strength training. You can do it in your own home. You can join a gym. You can join a boot camp. You can do that. And I've seen this is when someone comes into my gym, we need to address, I would say, at least those top 3 that I've given you. And we start with the exercise. And I just want to lock in 2 sessions or 3 sessions or whatever it is a week. And once we do that, then I can start making changes with the nutrition. But we've led with the exercise. And the exercise is almost like the reason. Okay, exactly what you said, or along similar lines. When I start my day with a sandwich, I'm hungry, or some people are moody, or energy fluctuates, whatever. But you only notice this when you're some form of high achiever. If you are living this life and you're on the couch and you're binging on Netflix and you all that kind of stuff and you're just low intake, you don't notice the fluctuations from nutrition.
Okay, interesting.
The harder I push myself, the more I notice, hey, that was rubbish. I'll give you an example. When we go to my in-laws' place, it's a 10-hour drive. And when we're there, for 3 or 4 days, I eat exactly what they eat and what they give us, and they treat us and they cook these amazing things, and it's all filled with love. But it's very different from how I'd eat at home. By day 2 or 3, I've got brain fog and my motivation is lost. And I think that's how most people are. Unless you've been on a high protein, quite a clean sort of diet, and you've kind of pushed yourself, and you wouldn't know the difference. So that's why I'm going exercise number 1. Nutrition number 2. I think if you nail those 2, sleep improves.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm happy to discuss it a little bit further, but coming to stress-free, I think stress-free is a terrible thing, but we need to differentiate between the acute and the chronic. Humans, for most of human history, there's another tribe that's attacked us, there's an animal that wants to eat us, or we're going to go hunt, and the stress is quite intense, but it's short. The problem with modern day lifestyle now, for most people, is the stress is really low intensity, but it's long duration. So you're working a terrible job. Imagine you work at a restaurant and you've got this Greek manager who just is on you the whole time. But
how do you know?
No, but you've got a terrible boss, or you're in a bad relationship, or you're struggling to pay the mortgage, and the stress is low, but it's lasting weeks, months, or even years. That is a really bad stress. Whereas on the flip side, an acute stress like hill sprints, or getting on an air bike, or going to gym, or doing any of those kinds of stuff, that's actually a good stress. That's a very good stress. And that's what I was saying earlier about the eustress and the distress. Eustress is a good stress. It helps us build. It makes us better. Distress is bad. And then if it's chronic, if it's distress and it's chronic, that's when it's really bad. So I'm not going to try to focus on a stress-free life. And then with regards to hydration, to me, how's this? In the 60s and 70s, if you ran a marathon and you drank like water or something like that, you were seen as soft. Okay. And I'm not saying that's right, but that's where we came from.
Right. We could do it back there with no hydration.
Yeah. You could just do it. And then, we start talking, and again, conspiracy theory or just reality is that Gatorade starts appearing. There's a Gatorade Sports Science Institute. They start publishing research. Guess what their research says? Hydration, dehydration is really bad. It's going to affect performance.
Right, because they're selling hydration products. Yeah.
Exactly. It all, we've talked about protein and nutrition and hydration now. Follow the money, or that's one of the key things. But there's a professor in South Africa, Dr. Tim Noakes, and he has shown repeatedly that if you drink to your thirst, you're fine. Okay, from performance or health, you drink to your if you're thirsty, you drink, and if you're not thirsty, you don't drink. And if you look at the research, where it comes out and where it gets very, very messy, is that you measure your dehydration through blood osmolarity. It's like how fluid is the blood, if it's sort of stodgy because it's really dehydrated, or it's flowing really nicely. But you know what most people do for dehydration? They measure it on body weight. So they go, this 100 kg athlete, we put him through an hour's training. He lost 2 kgs. He's now 98 kgs. He's lost 2 liters of water. And if they say, and he's not thirsty, then they go, you can't trust your thirst. Well, no. The issue is your body doesn't care about the body weight from that perspective, because for every gram of muscle glycogen, which is energy, carbohydrates that you store in your muscles, you store 2.6 grams of water. And if you do an exercise, CrossFit or sprints or football or whatever, and you're burning that glycogen, you also lose that water. So you don't have to, you're not going to be able to drink that weight back. No. You have to eat more carbohydrates after your competition, after your match. When your body eats that carbohydrate and stores it as glycogen, it's going to grab that water and store it together. And that's maybe when your thirst kicks in. So I'll give you a very practical example. When I worked with athletes, after the match, I never worried about dehydration. I'd make it available if you're thirsty. Of course, I'm not going to hold you back from it. Mm-hmm. But especially in something like tennis, where you might have, except for Grand Slams, you have a match today, you have a match tomorrow, and match the next day. So I'd get them to refuel on their carbohydrates and a bit of protein, bit of fat, but mainly carbohydrates in that first sort of period of time. And then as their body was breaking it down and storing it as glycogen, then they would get thirsty, then they would reach for the water. So I'd make it available, but not enforce it. But I would enforce the carbohydrate. And then that's when the body weight returns from that 98 kg athlete, becomes 100 kg because they're replacing the glycogen. And for every gram of glycogen, they're replacing the 2.6 grams of water.
I never thought of it this way. Nice.
Yeah. So that to me is why it's non-significant. And especially in 21st century, first world countries, you can get water. There's a tap somewhere, there's a water bottle somewhere, there's a, so to me, it's not important in that perspective.
So coach, talk to me about Wonderwoods. What made you want to start your own supplement company?
Okay, so one of the downsides about working in a gym is you are so limited geographically to who you can help. You've probably picked up the theme that health has been a big part of my life. Physical activity, nutrition has been a big part of my life. Almost since, I think I was about 7 or something. And I had a little swimming coach, and she told me that cordial, like red juice and orange juice and stuff like that, was bad. So as a 7 or 8-year-old, I just drank water. Like she just told me that, and that's been my life. But when you have a gym, you're really limited about how you can help people in terms of geographically. So my wife and I have always been interested in supplements. She's actually helped me a lot with health stuff, opened my eyes to a number of things from a very different angle. And so we've talked about it, and I've consulted to some supplement companies, and, we've done some things and helped, been on some boards where we come up with a new product. And it's always been there or thereabout, but I've been so focused on the coaching aspect. And an interesting thing happened where a company went into receivership. My wife and I knew some of the staff, and they reached out to us and said, do we want to be involved with this company? It's going to receivership. And so we said, yeah, cool. So we got the staff, and we didn't initiate the brand, and we just took the team across and we started making these supplements. It was very interesting because my experience with supplements were always what I'd call the basic sports supplements, so protein, creatine, collagen, those ones. And this team had created a lot of gut health products. And so this, I knew gut health was important, but it was something that I didn't know much about it. I probably had listened to a few Huberman podcasts or whatever, and that was the extent. And
love those.
Yeah. So it was it's been a massive learning curve. We started in May 2023. Very fortunate that we got picked up by a national distributor. Right now, as we speak, we're trying to get into New Zealand. If anyone in the UK is looking or listening, or US, we're looking at branching out there. But it's just been a fascinating journey, and it's actually helped me a lot in terms of understanding the gut. This is probably not your target audience, but there might be someone who's listening. Like, you have skin issues, it could be gut. You have hair issues, you have nail issues. And what's so interesting is our 21st century sort of medical mindset is, you've got skin issues, put some kind of steroid on it or rubber cream on it, and it's all topical. And we get these most amazing emails where people say, hey, I took your product and my eczema's gone, my scalp has improved. Like, it's all this amazing stuff. And when I was looking for a New Zealand distributor, and we haven't signed anything, so I've got to be careful what I say here, but I reached out to a guy, he didn't seem too interested. I said, mate, because he was mainly in sports stuff. I said, I've come from a sporting background, and I now know how important the gut is, and it's for athletes. Like, we need to be able to kind of take what we're doing and get into the athletics domain. And he said, okay, send some, he was so uninterested. He said, just send some products. So we sent some stuff over. The next thing, I get an email. A few minutes later, I'm getting back 2 phone calls from him. I'm like, what's going on here? So I chat to him. He's like, mate, we've got to get you into New Zealand. We need this stuff. So I was like, okay, it feels like there's a turnaround. What happened? And he said his cousin had some gut issues. And he said, mate, do you have anything for the gut? And my potential distributor, Andrew, said, yeah, I've got this thing, sent it up to him. And 3 days later, the cousin contacts Andrew and says, mate, what is this stuff? Get more of it. I need more of it. So
in
now
3
Andrew,
days.
in 3 days, yeah.
Wow.
And so Yeah. So then Andrew's now calling me, mate, we need to, he's driving the potential distribution, all kind of stuff. Like, it's not me pushing it. He's asking, when can we get it in? Send the product submission, send all this kind of stuff. So we've done it. But those kind of things, Australia's a big country, New Zealand's another country. I now feel like I'm helping someone in New Zealand who I've never met instead of my 90 square meter gym in Brisbane, So it's been really cool from that perspective.
That's cool. So now that you have all of this knowledge from literally running a supplement company, can you speak to any misconceptions or myths that you think need to be debunked when it comes to supplements?
Okay. All right. Now, you're going to hear that I'm not the best businessman in the world, but I do care about people's health. The supplement, and this applies to your protein, it applies to so many things, is in a way, you shouldn't need a supplement. Okay. Supplement is to supplement your good nutrition. And even though we produce these products, I still, and this applied to myself, applied to my family, applied to everyone. You should not need our product. Our product will help. Your end point is to not need my products. That's what you want to be. And I'll explain what I mean. Is if you're starting off and you got gut dysbiosis, you've got something wrong with your gut. It could be a thing called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It could be leaky gut. It could be whatever. Yes, our supplements will help, almost no doubt, and will help get you on the path. But then you should be weaning yourself off the supplements and reflecting on your diet. And I do understand to me, our supplements are more of a starting point to help. It's prebiotics, probiotics, it's some glutamine that can help strengthen your gut. There's a bunch of things, but you need to look at your lifestyle. If you've got a gut issue, pretty much the 5 things that you've mentioned earlier that we were discussing, there's going to be a sleep component. Sleep will affect your gut. Your gut will also affect your sleep. It's a two-way thing. Exercise will affect your gut. Gut will affect your exercise. I've had clients who've told me this, and I wish I was more aware of it at the time, but I think gut health was affecting their exercise. I think the number is about 80% or maybe even as high as 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut. So if there's something wrong there, some level of depression perhaps, or you don't feel motivated to go, or it's a struggle to get to the gym. So you're relying on some motivation and discipline and all these other kind of things. And then you need to tidy up your nutrition. Here's the thing. If you're eating foods that are highly processed and have high levels of preservatives in, what are those preservatives there for? They're there to kill bacteria and to make so they're going to kill the bacteria inside your stomach.
Right.
Yeah. So once you start understanding that, yes, use our supplements, 3 days, 3 months, whatever it is, but make sure you're making the changes in the background to go, okay, if I keep eating these processed foods, these preservative high foods, if I keep doing that, I'm kind of just going to be in this middle ground. What I really need to do is eliminate all those bad foods, and then I can wean myself off our supplements. And that's what I was saying. I'm a bad businessman.
No, I like your honesty, because you could have easily said be on the supplements forever, but if you really care about people's health, you got to be honest. And that's one of the problems, that people rely a lot on supplementation to the degree that they buy a bunch of everything, and they skip the gym, they don't sleep well, they play video games all night, and they think that these pills will keep me, will maintain me, but that's not true, because that is a supplement to a base. If you don't have a base,
exactly,
it's all worthless.
Yeah, 100%. And I kind of look at what the pharmaceutical companies do and then try to do the opposite, it's just an easy way to remain. But they'll put someone on a cholesterol lowering drug or some form of statin or whatever it is, and then that person signed up for life. And whereas to me, if you're on a drug like that, it should be, hey, I'm going to put you on this drug. We're going to make these sleep, stress, whatever, exercise changes. And then in 2 months' time, we're going to halve the dose. And then in 2 months' time, we're going to halve the dose again. And then you're going to come off it. That's how it should be. Sure. And that's how I think our supplements should be used. There's something like creatine, which I think is super important for women. I think it's super important for older men. I think it's more important for the cognitive benefits and the physical benefits. There's a whole bunch of other things that I think are important. Our collagen, if you're eating the whole animal, you'd probably be getting enough collagen. But I do think, nowadays everything's cut off and it's just the lean meat or just a little bit of fat. So you're not getting that connective tissue. We're not making very many slow cooked meals. So collagen's another one where I kind of go, hey, if you want, like I take collagen every day and I have for years. So I want to be clear. There's some things that I think are short term and some things like, hey, the more we research into creatine, the better we see it. Yeah, but especially with the gut health stuff. And then we've got like one product, which is some people don't nail it and their guts can be flare-ups. And so we've got a product to help settle that. But again, to me, it shouldn't be used every day. It should be, hey, you've got a bit of a flare-up. Let's get it back to normal. And then hopefully you'll have a few weeks or a few months where but you're not taking it every day because then it's just a subscription, not a supplement.
And how should people, or maybe how do you choose between companies? There's so many supplements out there, and there's creatine in so many forms and from so many brands. Who do you trust? How can the average consumer who doesn't know the nitty-gritty, of the science of supplementation, how do we help that person make the right choice? Which company to choose? Do you think there's certain criteria they need to follow?
Yeah, so go to wonderfoodsau.com and just buy all your supplements from. No, just no. It is an interesting one, and it's something that I've learned. So there's a study that came out a number of years ago that said in the US, 1 in 4 supplements were tainted, and tainted can mean one of two things. It either means that there's extra stuff that shouldn't be in there, or what should be in there isn't. So maybe the company's taken a few shortcuts and said, oh, it's got 5 grams of something when it only has 2 or 3 or something. Okay. So that's one thing. Second thing, in the EU, which was 1 in 8, they never studied Australia. But I can tell you from this point of view, Australian brands, we have to jump through so many hoops. Every product that comes in, every ingredient has to have a certificate of analysis. It has to have what's called a PIF. Like we have to get it signed off that it's exactly what is there. So all our ingredients, from a traceability point of view. So if I send you a product and then you return it, we'll be able to trace everything all the way back to see where any contamination happened. Then we have third-party independent testing. So we'll send our products off. We choose them randomly and just send them to make sure that they get tested. We build a long relationship with our suppliers. If we're doing a new product, we'll check out all the ingredients. We'll send it to trusted suppliers. So this is where we are very lucky is our team. The one guy on our team has had 24 years experience. He knows the suppliers really, really well. And he'll say, okay, get that ingredient from this one, get that. But, there might be some price fluctuations. So we get the certificate of analysis. Then we test all the ingredients to make sure exactly everything matches. So it's a massive, massive process, and it's really hard. Like we do not appeal to the consumer who's just looking at price, because price is, I would guess you'd want to live in the southern states of the US, you import things over from Mexico, chuck it together and distribute it from there or sell it from there. We don't have that. We don't want that. But to come back, it's hard for me to say what the company, but this is what I will say is every ingredient you add to your formulation needs to be at a certain level. And so what people do, if you look at our ingredients, it's a very short list. My sisters, I've got 3 sisters and a brother. My sisters often try my products and they think that they don't taste that good. We only use natural flavors. So like there'll be beetroot powder required in it and that becomes a taste. There are no fillers, there's no anything. But so one thing you can look at is look at the ingredient list. You want to have, it's the same as your foods. You pretty much want to have the smallest list of ingredients. Some things work really well together. So collagen is better absorbed if there's vitamin C. So there you want that. But, there are things where the ingredient list is so long and I can just look at it and just go, none of these ingredients are at sufficient quantities to actually make a difference. So you're just basically having expensive urine. You want something where, and my preference and who I want to work, my tribe, the people I want to attract and work with, we probably don't care too much about taste. Health is more important than like the texture. So another example, we're working to try and make a really healthy teenage focused protein because these kids are just eating rubbish. But Francesco, it's a massive balancing act because protein doesn't taste that nice. And so then you add a bit of flavor. Okay, we add some cocoa or we add some vanilla, like natural flavor. Okay, but now it doesn't mix really well. Okay, so you add some citric acid, you add some other things. Yeah, but they want it to be more like a milkshake and thicker. Okay, so you add some thickening agents. And now the ingredient list is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And your primary goal is to make it as healthy as possible. So where's the line? If they buy it and then they have one scoop and they go, I'm never having that again, you haven't hit your goal. But if you reduce your protein from, our goal is to hit 80, I'd love to be 85, but 80% protein. If we bring it down to 70%, now we've got some space to really make it like a milkshake and it tastes amazing, so that the 12-year-old at least is having protein for the first meal of his day, not being told that he's a bad kid because he hasn't eaten or he's had a Red Bull or something like that for breakfast, or a high sugar thing, whereas, and so this is behind the scenes, like the arguments and the discussions we have with the new product development team, because everything we add is kind of taking us away from the goal. But if no one consumes the product, we haven't hit our goal either. So coming back to it is, you want a very short list of ingredients on there. But I do understand there's some people, I'm not going to eat that, I'm too fussy or whatever. And you go, well, that's not for us. But this teenage drink is proving quite problematic for me, because I want it to be as healthy as possible. I want to give these kids the best start to their day, but also they need to drink it for that to happen. And if they don't like it, then that's not going to happen.
Right. So look for the listed ingredients possible, and a third-party certification. Those are the two main things that kind of in a way guarantee that you're going to have quite a good product.
Yeah, there's almost no guarantees, but I wouldn't even say about the third parties. I don't know how to get that information out there, because we don't advertise our we are just making sure we've tested our ingredients and
right.
Put it this way. My daughter is 9 years old. She needs to be able to have any of our products without me stressing. That's, to me, the highest form of certification that I can give anyone. If you said to me, is it safe? Yes, my 9-year-old daughter, she has this when she needs it, or every day, or I'll happily give it to her, or whatever. But it is such a tough one. And I wouldn't want to be a consumer looking at buying, because sponsorship and marketing can probably affect more than actually what's happening. I will tell you this. It's amazing, and I'm not going to mention any names. It's amazing how many of the companies that don't even make their own product. They're essentially a marketing company, and
That's the name.
It's just the name. And so Wonder Foods is our brand, Wonder Foods by Propel, and the company's called Propel Health. And one of the things we do is we actually make supplements for other people, and we put their label on it. So that's one thing our company does. It's not a big component of it, but it's a service that's available. And as I'm learning more, it's like, that very big name brand is just a marketing team, and they use another company similar to ours to contract manufacture. And that, to me, that's kind of interesting, because I love that we are making it. So it's our standards on everything. When we're not reliant on a third party who might make a stuff up. If we make a stuff up, it's my fault, 100%.
Yeah, and people are very easy to trust. That, it's a big name. Look, they've been around so long. They see them all over the TV. They just think it's like they make it and trust them. But at the end of the day, they all have someone somewhere making it up for them. And I see. Yeah. Okay, so, Coach.
Yes.
Last question for you.
Go for it.
What is the one thing that you want to be remembered for in your life?
One thing.
One thing.
It's got nothing to do with what we've talked about. Just to be a great husband and a great dad.
Oh, that's not nice.
Is that two things? A great family man, then. That's
a great family man.
That's what I'd love to be known for. Yeah. And if it was only be 2 kids and my wife, then I'd be very happy with that.
At the end of the day, that's the thing that matters, no?
Yeah.
Aside all of the money, the successes and the things, a happy family is vital.
Yeah, 100%. Believe that.
All right, Grant, thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you soon.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.